Hi, this is Alex from PHP Academy and welcome to this CSS tutorial on creating a drop-down style menu. So I'm going to take a few moments just to show you how this works and what it looks like. As you can see, I've got a menu on the screen at the moment with home, tutorials and contact. A small paragraph just below, that's simply for testing so we don't push any content down when we make this menu appear. Obviously this is going to be purely CSS, there's no JavaScript involved, so it's a really neat way to, create this kind of effect without any JavaScript required. It looks quite plain, but that's just because I wanted to save time in the tutorial and not faff around styling it. So let's take a look at how it looks when we hover over. Well, I've got this simple hover over change color. That's for menu items, all of them. However, for menu items that have a drop down, this happens. So you can see now we can come down here and we can select an option from this menu, and we can come across and select an option from this menu here. So this is done purely using CSS and clever positioning to hide and show particular elements based on their hover pseudo class. So let's go ahead and crack on with this. As I said, it's very plain. We'll be doing this from start to finish, so no code involved beforehand. We'll be creating our menus and then applying this effect to it. Okay, so we are starting off within our index.html file. As you can see, we've got a blank browser now. So all we have is we've got our layout for our document, and we've linked in this primary.css style sheet, which I also have open, but obviously we haven't created anything here yet. Now the first thing to do is draw out the initial menu, so the menu that will go across the vertical menu. And this is relatively straightforward with an unordered list. So let's go ahead and create that first of all. So we'll start with the markup that just sort of sets the scene for us to style onto. So we're going to have list items within an overall UL, and within here we're going to have a link. Now we're going to style this link to be have a lot of space, some padding, and essentially this means that when we hover over, we're not just hovering over the text to get the effect, we're hovering over the whole area of this. And if you don't understand quite what I mean, you'll see this in action a bit later. So the first one's going to be home. Let me just go ahead and pull this down and indent it just so it's a bit easier to see what we're doing here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this twice. Just so we've got our three menu items that we started with. So the first one is tutorials and the last is contact. So tutorials and contact are both going to have drop down menus. This one's going to have 3 items, this is going to have 2, but obviously that doesn't matter. You can add as many items as you want to this list. What I'm also going to do is underneath this unordered list is I'm going to create a paragraph of text. As I mentioned just a moment ago, this is just so we know that nothing else on the page is affected. So I'm just going to write a paragraph of text, of content here. Text here, that's fine. Okay, so now what are we looking like? Well, this is what we're looking like at the moment. Not great because we just have an unordered list with the default bullet styles. So let's first of all go ahead and sort of style up this this list and make it look a bit nicer. Okay, so what are we styling? Well, UL we are going to give an ID, just so we can target this element specifically and style, to make the changes to this style. So I'm going to say UL and I'm going to give it an ID, so I'm going to use that ID attribute. I'm just going to call it nav. Now in primary.css we can target this using UL #nav, so we're saying a UL with the ID of nav. Okay, so we can say UL nav. Well, what do we want to do? We want to get rid of this list style type, so we use the list style type property and we give it a value of none. Now this is going to cause problems a bit later on because we're going to have unordered lists within our list items. So we're going to have an unordered list here and here. So in actual fact we shouldn't be targeting this with ID. I'll remove that now, but it's just so you're aware of how this works. We want to be targeting all ULs on the page, and we're essentially just resetting this. So I'm going to set the margin and the padding both to 0, and this just pulls that up into the corner, gets rid of them horrible bullet points that we don't actually need. Okay, so now we're going to style up this nav UL bar. So ul hash nav. For each of the list items within the ul, what do we want to do? I'm going to set the background of these to white. No point really here, but if you are doing this, you might want to set a background to white just so you don't see through them. And I'm also going to float each one left. So what's going to happen here? Well, we have home, tutorials and contact now exactly next to each other. Now the problem here is you've already seen that this paragraph has now jumped up here. That's because we're using floats and we need to clear the floats. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to create a class called clear. And remember, a class can be used in a variety of different places. Well, more than once. It's not unique. And I'm just going to say clear both. Okay, so the options for this are clear left, clear left or clear right. But I'm going to clear both. And this is just a class that I usually add to a style sheet so I can use it anywhere to clear left or right floats. So here I'm going to say div class equals and end that element, and the class here is clear. So this will clear any of these floats, so this will now behave as normal. So you'll see now that that has adjusted the behavior. We've got our list item, or our unordered list up here, our list items floated left, and this is unaffected. Brilliant. So now we need to go ahead and actually style the rest of this nav. So we're going to make it quite easy. We're just going to say ul hash nav lia. So we're styling any a or anchor tags or attribute anchor elements within these li's. Now what do we want to do? Well, an anchor's default display inline, so we need to display block, and this is just going to allow us to give it padding and things like that. So the padding, I'm going to set 5 pixels to the top and the bottom and 10 pixels to the left and the right. So the north and the south are 5 pixels, the east and the west are 10 pixels. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to set the color to black. Okay, so visited, anything like that's going to be black. So now it looks like this. Okay, so slightly better. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to set the text decoration to none. So we don't have that underline that we get by default on links. And then I'm going to set the border bottom to 1 pixel, solid, and let's say CCC, sort of like a light grey colour. There we go. So we now have this sort of more menu-ish looking thing. Now we want to set a hover pseudo class here. A pseudo class is essentially something that doesn't actually, a state that doesn't actually exist on the page, but this is sort of by user action. So when the user hovers, we can change the properties of this here. Any of these properties, we can add properties or reset properties or anything like that. So in this case, I'm going to change the background color. Well, we don't actually have a background color technically, but I'm going to set this to AAA, which is a dark grey color. So when I hover over each one now, we get this effect here. Okay, so relatively straightforward, but we're not now getting down to the list items within. So let's go ahead and add to our markup and get this working. So I'm going to create another unordered list within here. Now ensure that you understand why this is happening. We're creating an unordered list within these LIs, so we can show this unordered list when this is hovered over. Okay, it's as straightforward as that. Really, and this sort of trick, if you like, doesn't involve too much more styles. We've probably got another 10 lines of styles, which isn't a lot. So let's go ahead and create some links in here. I'm going to set the href to hash because we're not linking off anywhere at the moment. So here I'm just going to type some bits in. I'm going to paste these down and just enter some new information in here. So CSS. And let's say JavaScript. Okay, so I haven't pulled these down just because it's going to get too long. But let's go ahead and create an unordered list within here as well. And let's just get rid of one of them and change this to by email, by telephone. So we've sort of got this hierarchy, not a hierarchy, but a sort of we've got this li, then we've got a ul within this li that's within an overall ul. So it just sort of staggers downwards. So let's take a look at how this looks now. Well, it looks a bloody mess, but you can sort of start to see how this is going to work. These we don't want to be floated left because we want them in a vertical fashion, whereas this is in a horizontal fashion. So let's go ahead and make a few changes here. We need to be a bit more specific in our styling now because we need to target these unordered list and allies within this overall. So what do? Well, we need to say ul-nav, which is the overall nav. Then we need to say li and then ul, because the ULs are within the li within our overall UL. So sounds confusing, but go look at the markup and it's not too bad. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to I'm going to target the LIs within this, and I'm going to say float none. So we're not floating left, we're not floating right, we're just putting these underneath each other. So it's actually now looking like a menu. It's looking like how we want it. We just don't have the effect that's shown and everything. And you'll notice that this paragraph down here has been shifted down the page, so that's something we're going to need to correct as well. Okay, so what do we need to do now? Well, let's go ahead and position these items and see what happens, or position these new menus that have appeared. So UL with the ID of nav. What I'm then going to do is target the list item, the unordered list within here, not the unordered list and then the allies within. And I'm going to set the position of this to absolute. Now have a look at what happens to this paragraph when I refresh the page now. Okay, you can see that not much has changed here. Everything's been pushed slightly closer together. You saw that little jump there, but this paragraph is now underneath this, and that's exactly what we want, because we don't want our page contents to shift downwards if anything new is shown. And here I'm just going to say display none, and you have probably guessed what that does. It just removes them. It doesn't remove them, but they're hidden. They're still in the markup. If we go and inspect this, you can see that we've got the ULs, we've got the PHP, CSS within this LI, so they still exist. They're just not shown. So now we want to actually get this effect where when we hover over the main list items, we want to show the other ones. So how do we do this without JavaScript? Well, it's actually extremely easy. What we do is we say, again, we're targeting this overall navigation. We want to say li hover. So li hover refers to any of these that are hovered over, not the A's within. And you'll see, I'll try and explain why we're not targeting the A's, we're targeting the overall LIs. So when these are hovered, any UL inside, we want to do this in here too. And what's that? Well, we want to just change the display type to block, which will just essentially show it. Here we hid all of the ULs. Here, when we hover over any LI, so the main list items, we show the ULs within, which are the sub-menus, so it's relatively straightforward. Let's go ahead and test this. So this one doesn't have a UL, so nothing's shown. However, these two do. So we've already got this effect that we wanted. Perfect. So now I'll just quickly explain before I end the tutorial why this doesn't work. Because here we're saying when we hover over a list item A, so the link within this, we set the background. But why can't we do this? Well, because this here is an unordered list within the list item. It's not within the anchor tag. So if we look back at our markup, it's not within this anchor tag here. So we are targeting the LI, let's give it an example here. We're targeting the LI. When we hover over this LI, this is shown. If we were targeting this, it would have to be something within this element, and text is the only thing in there. So whether or not that makes sense to you, that's why we can't do that. But have a look at this if you're struggling to understand that concept. Anyway, with some very, very basic CSS, we have successfully created a drop-down menu.